As we begin, tonight's virtual learning event is being hosted on the traditional territory of the Anashobek Nation, the people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and the Potawatomi nations. And further, we give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. Thank you. Okay, so again, welcome everyone to electHER Now, online learning event called Building Positive Connection. We could not have had a better name for this, Building Positive Connections. My name is Joan John. I am a social development consultant. I am also a first-term counselor in the municipality of Southgate and a member of the electHER Now Advisory Council. This session is geared to those who are elected to municipal council in Ontario and focuses on important part of our role. We also think the discussion will be of interest to those who are curious about seeking office in the future or wondering how they might build positive connection and support elected officials in their community. To begin, I'd like to introduce our topic speaker, Dr. Olive Yonge. Dr. Yonge holds a PhD and is a registered psychologist. She is a former nurse, Erickson-trained coach, and distinguished professor emeritus of University of Alberta, now in phased retirement. Dr. Yonge tells us that she is fascinated by emotions since they drive energy and can create havoc also when not understood or managed. And we all know that. Welcome, Dr. Yonge. We'd love to hear your thoughts about tonight's topic. Again, building positive connections. Isn't this lovely?
Thank you so much, Joan. And for everyone online, please call me Olive. Everyone does. And I'm so impressed with your organization, electHER Now, because we have to organize to change culture, and you do. You have a vision, you have a mission, and you have action. And a night like tonight is exactly that. So I'm going to talk 10 minutes. The first positive connection is actually with you. You are the first positive connection. And then the second part of the 10 minutes is the other, building positive connections for other people. So the very first question I have for you is, do you like yourself? Maybe, do you even love yourself? And another question is, what is your superpower? And maybe you don't feel like you have a superpower. Oprah said her superpower was talking, or a superpower can be in the area of music or sports or friendship. So maybe you don't have a superpower, but maybe you would like to have a superpower. Maybe you are working on a superpower. So just take a few seconds and put it in chat. Put down in chat, what is your superpower or the one you're working on? Okay, they're coming up. I connect people to each other. Very nice, nice superpower. What's another one? Advocating for individuals. Lovely. I also hope you're advocating for yourself. There are many ways of doing that. Getting tons of stuff done. Organization. Keeping an open mind, especially with those who see things differently than I do. Yeah, those are perfect examples of superpower. Now, why would I ask you to put them into chat? Well, one, I've been teaching online, and I know how important chat is for engagement. But another thing is, when you put down your superpower, you are declaring it for yourself, but others are witnessing it. And that's the important power. It's a power in the writing, and others witness it. And so much of work in politics is being witnessed by others. And so you have to have a stand. You have to have a position. You have to know who you are. And if you don't know who you are, guess what happens? You are a floor mat. You have to have a stand, whatever that is. Now, another question I would have, and you can put this in chat, is how do you promote positivity in yourself and for yourself? How do you promote positivity? Or how do you lighten up your culture that you're working in? And again, I won't read those off, and you can just put them down. I'll give you a small example from myself. So if I'm working in a black suit culture, and a black suit culture is where all the leaders wear black suits. So as a woman, I wear a red suit jacket. I'm a little different. But my very favorite suit was a periwinkle one, top and bottom flare skirt. I also like jewelry, like this, handmade jewelry. Jewelry that I can get at gift shops and art galleries. They have the best jewelry. Or you go to the farmer's market and you get it directly from the jeweler themselves, the artisan. But I like to push the edges a little bit in the culture, part of the culture, but also distinct from that culture. And that's how I declare myself. In terms of also positive connections, I believe our connection is through our brain, our heart, and our biome. We connect bodily with others in a positive way. So right now I'm coaching a woman, and she is a very skilled clinician. She also is a mother of 4, which is lovely. And she knows nothing about administration. She contacted me and she said, I do a workshop on vision, mission, and strategic plan for her department. And it's quite a large department. And I said, sure, but before we start negotiating that, what is your vision for the department? What is your mission? What do you want to do? And she said, well, actually, I have no idea. So basically, the question then to her was, if you don't know yourself where you're going, how are you going to lead others? Like, how will you lead others? So if you cannot connect positively with yourself, how can you connect positively with others? So that's the main message in that. So the very first intervention I had with her after we formed a relationship was asking her what her values were. Now, if you go online, you will find many sources of how to do values clarification or list your values. They're easy to do. Easy to find. I really like Berkeley. They have a beautiful health center that I use a lot. So we did the values, and she had to narrow them down. Sometimes there's 60 values, 80 values, 40 values. She had to narrow them down to 3. Really hard. And then I made it harder for herself. One of her values was wisdom. So I asked her, well, give me an example how you acted on this value. So it's one thing to have a value, but then the other thing is, how do you act on those values? And now, as humans, we have a great ability to delude ourselves. I mean, I think Freud nailed it when he said we have these defense mechanisms to manage our anxiety. And now we have 30 defense mechanisms. But because of these kinds of distancing behaviors within ourselves, it is really hard for us to actually know what we believe, to tell our truth, and to know how to be positive about ourselves. And that's why I think in the coaching relationship with her, it's really going to work. And she is terrific. I also want to mention self-compassion as the last point under self. I highly believe in self-compassion. You have made mistakes. I have made mistakes. Big mistakes, little mistakes, public mistakes. And if you don't have self-compassion, you have blame and guilt and depression. And when you're asked to make these decisions, you're doing the very best that you can, but sometimes it's not exactly the right decision for the right time. And I really learned this from Christine Neff's work. She's got a wonderful YouTubes and programs, but I also learned it from my daughter. My daughter was teaching kindergarten, and she said those little kindergarten kids come in with high perfectionism, need to achieve. And she has to teach them self-compassion starting in kindergarten. And the phrase she teaches them is, oh, well. And I want you to repeat after me, oh, well. Remember that, oh, well. Write it on a little Post-it note and put it on your desk and write, oh, well. And apparently I have all these sayings. People have told me I have these sayings. And because they'll come back to me years afterwards and they said, oh, Olive, when you said no babies are dying, that you put it into perspective. And I think you always have to keep your perspective and keep on saying, oh, well. Of course, my little granddaughter doesn't like peas, so she would throw them over her high chair and say, oh, well. And there it was. Okay, now I'd like to shift into establishing positive connections with others. And I think to promote positivity at work is actually easier than with yourself. I think working on our own positivity is much harder than doing it at work. At work, we have lots of research. We have so many research studies and evidence for how to do this, because it's the bottom line. If you have a positive work culture, you have high productivity. You have low absenteeism. You have you have a high retention rate. We know why we want to have positivity in the work culture. It works. It really works. So there's no problem. And our HR departments, if they're good, really help us in this area. But also as a leader, oh my gosh, I know a lot about HR that I didn't know until I went into administration. So the very first thing I do for myself when I start a new administrative job, I establish trust with every employee. I go to their cubicle, I go to their office, I interview them, and I give them and I get to know them. And in that conversation, some have said, no one's ever come to my cubicle ever to ask me what matters to me. And that I write everything down. Oh, they love it that I write it down, because then it really means something. And with that conversation, I learn secrets. I learn fears. I learn what matters. I learn what's going on in that organization, and they give me actually the direction where I need to go as a leader in that area. But it takes a ton of time. I remember for one of the jobs, I interviewed 35 people for an hour each. By gosh, that paid off. Every meeting after that for 5 years with that group, it paid off over and over and over again. Small amount of time, but boy, the payoff was essential. Another thing for promoting people is to really care about them, to show them sponsorship, allyship, coaching, mentorship. Where's your career in this? How can I help you? How can I get what you want to achieve in your life? And these are the things I know. So I used to actually have walking meetings with other people, because in walking, there's something about walking that you get insights. Walking really works. But again, it's in the questions you ask them. It's not in the answers, it's in the questions you ask them that you really show that you're really listening to them and caring for them. The last strategy is gratitude. So I've done a lot of work for the Department of Pediatrics here at the University of Alberta with their visiting scholar, and they wanted, get this, post-pandemic strategy of how to manage the burnout among the medical doctors. And so they decided that I should do joy in work. So I interviewed tons of people, focus groups, and then started giving them reports and having sessions and workshops with them. But one of the strategies that really stuck with me was gratitude. There's a ton of power in gratitude. And I mean, we know gratitude, genuine gratitude, you use cards and words and gifts, feedback, celebrations, you name it, you can be positive. And I thought I was quite a positive person, but my direct report in the provost office was positive. He would write love emails to staff, noting specific behaviors, saying how much he appreciated them. And I really upped my game. Like I really upped my game in terms of giving wonderful, meaningful feedback. And I just got an email, which I won't read to you because I didn't get her permission, but I worked with her 14 years ago, and she said, I just want to tell you, you had one of the, I have lots of sayings. I reduce all my knowledge into quotes. And she said, one of the ones, never worry alone. Never worry alone. And I really believe in that. I never worry alone. If someone's worried, I go in and I worry with them. Usually the Xerox machine is broken down, and I say, okay, we'll figure this out. We'll fix this darn Xerox machine or whatever. We had a situation where we had a hoax, we had a threat. And I said, okay, we'll talk about this. We'll be together and when we work through this. Anyways, 14 years later, she says, every time I use that phrase, and she says, I use it often, I always think of you. And I thought, wow, that's sticky. That's a sticky idea. And I'm sure you have yours as well. Now, the very last little story I want to leave you with is the cleaning lady or janitorial staff or custodial staff. I Googled this to see if they had changed their name in terms of our language. And there's an American version and there's a Canadian version. It's so interesting. But in our building, we have council chambers. And you go into the building and then you have these marble steps. and then they go into the council chambers. So 200 to 300 people will go into these council chambers. And in the spring, it's a bath of mud. It's just mud on those steps. And you have to note that if they took their boots off, there'd be no place to put them, because whoever built that building never thought that you actually use boots in Alberta. So I was watching this cleaning lady clean these steps after, the meeting had started, and she went in and she started cleaning the mud off these steps. And I guess I must have been late for the meeting. And I said to her, I so appreciate that you're cleaning these steps for us. Just so simple. Because I thought, there go I, because I could be cleaning steps, and I certainly have clean steps. And she just nodded, it's fine. And then a few weeks later, the person who worked in records came into my office, and she just said, we have decided that you are the best leader in this office. And I said, excuse me, curious feedback, because I was surrounded by great leaders, and I knew that, because I was a vice provost, but so are many other really good vice provosts. And so I just said to her, well, where did that come from? It's quite a compliment, and thank you, but where did that come from? And it came from, you know who? It was the cleaning lady. Because apparently I was the only one that has ever spoken to her, ever, or noticed that what she was doing. It was the power of gratitude. It was just a little thing, just a little acknowledgement. And so I would challenge you to look around you and to see who haven't you thanked? Who do you need to thank? And then I'm going to close my 10-minute presentation by asking you to get out your iPhones or your Androids and just text someone right now and just say thank you to them. It could be anyone. Thank you for something. Say thank you for something. Thank you for being you. Thank you for listening. Thank you. Thank you for being the best daughter I've ever could have. I say, I've got the best daughter ever. I only have one. Just take a minute and say, thank you.
Thank you, Alia, for your insight about tonight's topic. Oh, well.
Oh, well.
Oh, well.
Oh, well. Get over yourself, whatever.
And I must say my distinguished culture is wearing my hair natural and kinky in its natural form. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
I'd now like to introduce the other members of tonight's panel. Mayor Sue Carleton joined us from the municipality of Georgian Bluffs. First elected as a councillor in 2014, she was acclaimed as deputy mayor in 2018. Elected mayor in 2022 and has served on the Grey County Council for the past 6 years. Welcome, Mayor Carleton. And my next guest, Councillor Alysson Storey, is joining us tonight from Chatham-Kent. First-time Councillor Storey was elected in 2022. She described herself as an enthusiastic and experienced communication specialist, and we can't wait to hear what she has to say about tonight's topic, because she is a communication specialist. I'd like to ask you both to tell us a little bit more about yourself, starting with Mayor Carleton. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan, and please call me Sue. Good evening, everyone, and I'd like to thank the organizing committee for including me this evening. As Joan has already indicated, this is my third term on council in Georgian Bluffs. I am the fourth generation in my family to serve on council or on municipal council, starting with my great-grandfather, who was a reeve in the former Albemarle Township, and one of 20 men who each put in $5 to arrive at the $100 fee to get the town of Wyerton incorporated back in the early 1900s. And his son, my great-uncle, was also reeve of Albemarle for 2 terms. My father was a councillor in Albemarle for 3 terms. And at the same time as Dad was on council, my Aunt Cheryl, his sister, was a councillor for the town of Wyerton. So ahead of her time a little bit for women being on council at that time. I have maintained there's a level of insanity that runs in our family, because to keep doing this seems a little strange. My children assure me they will never do this. I assure them there is still time. I am a widow. My husband was my greatest supporter in all of this. And I have 3 children and 6 grandchildren. I'm also a licensed lay worship leader with the United Church of Canada. I think it's important to stay mentally active, and being on council definitely fulfills that requirement for me.
Mhm.
One of the things that I really enjoy about being on council is the variety of information and knowledge we need to have to do our jobs as council members. I think it's important that we have a basic understanding of so many different areas. And understanding what our role as council members is in comparison to the role that staff fulfill, staying out of the areas where we shouldn't be. I would encourage all women to get involved, as I would also caution you to be aware of the commitment involved and be prepared to read a lot of really boring information. So thank you for having me here this evening. I look forward to the questions.
You're very welcome. Alysson?
Thank you, Joan, and I hope everyone can call me Alysson as well. Really honored to be here tonight. To all night. I was taking copious amounts of notes, so this was just as beneficial to me as I hope we can be to everybody else. So really excited to be here. As Joan mentioned, this is my first term for the municipality of Chatham-Kent. I'm actually right this moment in Prince George, BC, so I'm several thousand kilometers away from Chatham-Kent at the moment at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities board meetings. I'm a member of the Ontario caucus here, and really excited to be zooming in from another location. And I'll talk a little bit about why I joined FCM probably later in our chat. But I also ran for mayor in 2018. I was the only female with 6 other men, and that was really an experience that I would say equal parts scarred me, and was also very valuable and really informed my decision eventually to run as councillor. So I will keep my bio short tonight and probably elaborate on different aspects of my background and my experience in the questions, because I know we've got a lot of great discussion points. But I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you everyone for joining us, and I'm looking forward to a great discussion.
Thank you, Alysson, and thank you, Sue. Now is the time for our popular question and answer section. Our panelists will provide their answers to the question gathered in advance from our guests. If you have a follow-up or a new question tonight, please direct them to Ask Me in our chat room. We will try to get through as many as we can this evening as time allows. So, my first question is, what are some of the best ways you have found to help build positive connection? And I will start off with Sue.
So I would say be open to hearing what people are saying, whether I agree with them or not. Be open to listening to them and to ask questions. Look for the different perspectives that residents may have, and at the same time, set boundaries. I think that's a very important thing for all of us, is to have those set boundaries.
Thank you, Sue. So, Olive, could you chime in on that one?
Sorry, I was turning off my heater. My study is like minus 25. Yes, I really, I'll say, Sue, boundaries are really, really important. And it goes back to what I say: know yourself, love yourself, connect with yourself. When you're in public office, people really expect you to do miracles or all sorts of things, and you have to be so gentle with your rejection of their craziness. Like, it's a great idea, but it'll never ever work. That's your inner voice, right? But then you have this outer thing going on where you have to be quite firm, kind, gentle, and if you can use humor, even better. But I think boundaries are important because you need to have integrity. You have to have a word, you have to be true to your word, and you need to be authentic. Otherwise, people see through you, and then they don't trust you. And I mentioned trust briefly in my presentation, but to me, it all starts with trust.
Well, I would certainly say, as someone who works in communications and with my other hat, I certainly think that communications are really critical to help put people at ease. There's no such thing as a stupid question. You know, when folks email you and reach out to you about anything municipal, don't be grateful they've asked you the question. They're asking you for help, which is actually a really generous way of looking at people reaching out to you. Don't assume anything. don't assume anything about the person you are connecting with if they're reaching out to you or asking you any kind of question or providing feedback. I've already made that mistake where I think I know something about someone because of the community they're from or what have you. And often that is not the case. We all know the saying about the word assume. I won't share it in the crowd, but it's not a complimentary one. It also, I find making positive connections, because I have found so far, and I'm a little, like about a year and a half almost under my belt, when folks are reaching out to you, they're often reaching out to you because they're at their wits' end. They've tried to find answers in every other place and they cannot get them. And so they're reaching out to you, often for the first time reaching out to an elected official, and they can be intimidated, they can be uneasy, and often they're upset. And so if you can empathize, I think someone put empathy in the chat, that's huge. I often say, someone emailed me the other day, just over the weekend, saying that their children were almost hit at a crosswalk in front of their school. Like a very scary experience for them, and they were really upset because the municipality should be doing more to monitor the speed at these crosswalks, right? And so the first thing I said, I'm really sorry that happened to you. That must have been really scary. And they were very appreciative that I acknowledged that. And then we talked about solutions and what we might do. So those are probably my top 5 answers about making sure you build positive connections. That puts people at ease. And if you are showing respect to them, you don't have to worry about anything else in that context, because really that is the basis of all I've said. Integrity and trust all spring from that. And folks will remember what you told them years, as Olive said earlier, many years later. So if you're not being having integrity in your response, they're going to know, and they're going to call you on it, probably at the most inopportune moment. So if you are true to yourself and your values when you're responding with respect and gratitude to people, you'll never steer anybody wrong. And you can also say, I don't know. I've said that a lot. I don't know, but I will find out. And no one expects you to have all the answers. So don't beat yourself up if you don't have it right away. Say, I don't know, and I will be happy to find out. And if you follow up, usually folks are perfectly happy with responses like that.
Thank you very much, Alysson. Thank you for that. Thank you, ladies. I think all those answers are really great answers. So I'll move on to question number 2. What should I do if I reach out to make a connection and the response isn't positive? So since you had 5 great reasons and you started out, I will just let you continue.
Oh boy, this is a fun one. This is one that as women, I think we often take things personally. We want to solve things. We are empathetic to people, and we take on emotions and feelings of others, whether we mean to or not. So what I will say, and this is a full disclosure, huge work in progress on this front, because in a public role like this, people will dislike you for absolutely no reason whatsoever. That you cannot change that. There's something you can do, or a motion you can make, or a social media post, or what have you. They're just not going to like you. And a lot of us, I'm one of them, have a really tough time with that. Why don't they like me? And how can I do to force them to like me? And that just makes it worse. So I will keep it short and sweet. Don't take it personally, because this is really difficult. And we care so much about this that just chalk it up to an oh well, as Olive said, and see it as a learning experience, and how you can definitely be part of that learning experience for yourself. Just don't take it personally. That's a tough one. I am working on that myself, but just like water off a duck's back, there will be folks that are just not going to be happy with answers you give them no matter what. So breathe in, breathe out, and let it go.
Thank you very much. Sue, I'm not too sure if you wanted to add something to the first question. I'm sorry if I missed you, but if I did, you can just add it into this question. So,
Okay, thanks, Joan. The only comment I was going to make is a lot of what Olive and Alysson have both said about integrity, don't take it personally, and all of that. There's a book I read years ago, The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. It's absolutely fantastic. I think there's now one out called The 5th Agreement, and it's about doing your best every day, acknowledging your best will be different every day. I think that would help you in situations where you get a negative response, and don't take it personally. It's not directed at you. It's them coming from where they are at right now. So that would be my response there. I guess I would also ask questions, get more information, find out why are they unhappy. And I often find if I ask the questions and find out where it's coming from, giving them information in return helps them understand why council maybe made a decision they did, why something's happened in a certain way, and just don't take it personally is probably the best advice ever.
Thank you. And Olive, could you just share some of your insight?
Yes. When you are out there, you will have people that don't like you personally. They'll attack you personally, or I wish it was just the ideas you had, but oh well. So I was telling my friend, I said, I really love this administration. It is so great, all this conflict, and I'm just loving it. And she wisely said, but it's not your conflict. And it isn't. It's not your conflict. Yes, you're representing an organization and it's a new change and what have you, but it's bigger than you. And so once you realize it's actually not your baby that's ugly, it's the organization's baby that's ugly, you just happen to be in that position, it lets it go. Now, here's something really important though. You are going to be aggressed upon if you're in public office. And the very first thing after the aggression is a microaggression, hopefully, and not a bigger aggression, but a microaggression is an aggression. Find a trusted friend immediately and debrief. Get rid of that negativity. So my background has been in the academic area. So I review articles, I review grants, people review, the same pool reviews my grants, they review my articles. And sometimes they get a really, really negative review, like it's awful. And then I have to be very careful when the next grant lands on my desk that I don't carry that negativity to that next grant. And I consciously tell myself to not go into toxicity, because I was hurt by those terrible comments they made about my great thoughts, right? And I have to clear myself. So I do a lot of journaling. I write it out, and it's in the rereading of the journal a week later or 10 days later that I actually see it differently than as it is. I've also been aggressed upon, and then when I finally figure out that I need to do the apology, then I go do the apology and they say, oh, it's nothing. And I'm going, oh, yeah, me. It was something to me, but apparently it was nothing to them. So yeah, don't make us, thank you, Alysson, for saying the assumptions. Like, yeah, check it out, take responsibility for it if you can. But then let it go, because another one's coming. Like, don't pile them up. There's one more thing I want to say, and that's empathy. So when a person is aggressing upon to you, and should be just your ideas and not you, but I sometimes flip on to empathy, and I do a little mental visualization. So when I was learning how to do counseling, I had a huge issue with people that were alcoholics. Like, how could I be effective? AA was so much better than me. They were. And I remember the professor saying, when you have a person who's an addict and you have to see them, regardless if AA is not there for them, but you're seeing them, regardless of your beliefs, imagine them as a baby, a wanted, cuddly baby. And I do that still. If I have a negative personality in front of me or situation, I do a flip and I do a visualization. And that visualization brings me some empathy for them as people, because we connect human to human. The ideas just get in the way, but it's heart to heart.
Thank you very much, Olive. Question number 3. What connections have you found especially helpful, and which ones have surprised you? And we'll start with Sue.
So I was thinking about that question, and I'm not sure I have a really great answer to it. One of the connections that I use all the time would be staff, reaching out to other council members, talking to members of the community, but I find all of them very helpful. I don't think I've found one that's really surprised me. So I'm maybe going to have the short answer there.
That is wonderful. I have a lot of surprises. Okay, Alysson.
I'm similar to Sue. I think there are, great connections you can make as a councillor or as mayor, deputy mayor that can be really helpful with administration, with local media. If you have any left in your community, a lot of us sadly we don't have a lot left, but they often have, a long memory of different issues. And if you have a great relationship with them, they can help provide that feedback. I think considering other professional organizations that focus on elected officials, like Association of Municipalities of Ontario, AMO, FCM, which is where I am, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, ROMA, Rural Ontario Municipality Association. There's a whole bunch of acronyms. One thing, if you're not involved with government, we love our alphabet soup, so I won't go through all of them, but groups like that can be very valuable. I will say one quick, very surprising connection. This is why if you treat folks with respect, it can come back to help you, because I have had, there's been some very difficult topics of discussion around our council table this year, to the point where we actually had to have a full SWAT team in our council chambers with weapons, because we had death threats, we had a very negative, frightening experience on several issues that were not municipal, but got brought into a municipal context, and it was really nasty. So, and there was another councillor who was on the opposite side of this issue, but we ended up basically putting that aside, and now we are allies on another major issue that faces our whole community. We've had to unite on an issue that is municipal versus another level of government, and we actually have a respectful relationship with each other. And if you had told me that even 6 months ago, I would not have believed it. So if you keep those relationships, even if the personality piece is a clash, if you keep it respectful, you will have that little kernel of something to build on when you need to, because you will never guess who you might need to be aligned with to move forward other issues in your community.
Thank you, Alysson. And Olive, would you want to chime in on that?
I think Sue and Alysson have really addressed it. I'm just going to give you just a short little story. Female bonding. So I was chairman of Campus Alberta Quality Council. So we evaluated all the academic programs in the province of Alberta. There were some women on our council and some men, more men than women. What was most interesting, we did all our bonding in the washroom. That's when we told the truth. That's when we said, what? How should we vote on that? What do you think about this? And it was just a little bit of a surprise to me that the washroom became very important to us. Just a little aside.
That is a great one. Thank you very much for sharing that. Okay. Question number 4. I have an idea and need to build support for it with fellow council members and staff. Where should I start? This is a great question. And Olive, I'm going to throw you right out there on this one.
I love this question because I always have lots of ideas. Sue, like you, I'm a widow, and my late husband had to do all my ideas because I couldn't get around to all of them. He was such a great advocate for me. So I just want to just some points here. All of you, if you are in public office, have ideas. That's why you're in public office, because you have ideas. So you already are marked with ideas. Now you have to decide what will be your priority. Like don't run around like bashing all the windmills. You decide exactly what you will put your energy in. Second thing is you have to understand that some ideas take years to socialize, years. And when I saw the stats from on our pre-meeting last week, that some people, like 10 people only had 1 term in office. No. You go into office thinking you're a 2-term person. Some ideas you can't get through until the 2nd term because of the socialization that is needed. The other thing in terms of the ideas, don't be naive. Don't be impulsive or Pollyannish. Oh yeah, we can do this. Think carefully and deeply and consult because there are so many issues that need to be considered. It's actually the devil is in the details. So I had lots of big projects I moved through, but it was only through my advisory boards, personal advisory boards, that I got the feedback and the insights. And sometimes it was the EA that had the best feedback for me, for us. But it's like project management. It's, you know, it's to make it successful, so this bridge will be built and the bridge will not fall down. You really have to do so much pre-work before you move that along. Yeah, I put a little note for myself. It's kind of like making a tort. Make sure you have all the ingredients. Make sure you have a good recipe. Do all the pre-work before you bake the tort, and the tort will turn out. But if you don't do your pre-work, it won't.
Thank you, Alif. Thank you very much. I always believe in building bridges. So, Alysson, you want to give us a little insight on
Well,
that?
I love me a good dessert reference. So I will definitely, I love that analogy. I am totally using that, Olive. Thank you. All I will add to that is basically be ready to compromise. Most of the time, I'm not saying if, again, don't compromise your values. If you truly believe in something that you are working on, then you don't necessarily want to compromise. But there's often a lot of issues that I have worked on so far that I am willing to negotiate and work with other councillors, because that ensures that it will move forward. And often they see something totally differently than I do. There's 18 of us on our council, which is a whole nother issue because that's a large council for a community our size. That means I have to make usually 17 phone calls before the next meeting, which is a lot of time to take to do that, but it pays off. It really does pay off to take that time. Try not to ever burn a bridge, you know, because you will often need that person as an ally later on. And just be flexible. I think flexibility is key on that in most every instance, and to keep an open mind, because often having feedback from another councillor who can help you shepherd that forward will help ensure success, and something even better can come out of it. So being flexible, being respectful is always usually a recipe for getting things done around the council table.
Thank you very much. And Sue, would you like to chime in on that, please?
Yeah, I think the only thing I can add is if I have an idea, I will often take it to staff first, because they will often look at me and say, yes, that's been thought of before, or they will find the reasons it might not work, or they might find the reasons it could work better if done differently. So I think going that route and listening to them first before taking it to the rest of council, get the background information. I think Alysson just said, be willing to change. Just because it's my idea doesn't make it the best idea. Be open to other suggestions and be ready to tweak that idea before you start trying to really push it forward.
Well said, Sue. I think that is very important. Not because it's my idea, doesn't, I will remember that. Very well. Thank you, ladies. I'm learning so much tonight. I receive, number 5, I receive a strong message from a community member about an issue up for vote. I agree with this person, but alas, the final vote did not go our way. Can you give me tips to respond that will help ease the anger I am sure to receive from them and perhaps other in our community? This is a great one.
I can tackle that quickly, Joan.
Okay.
This just happened to me in Chatham-Kent.
Go ahead.
So we had a huge, this is an ongoing issue, but we just had an issue that is the entire community is against it, basically. And they were very vocal. They sent petitions and they gave deputations and they wrote letters to the editor. And it's an issue that I am with the community on for a variety of reasons, but the majority of council is not. So, and I got a huge number of emails and social media messages saying, that's it, I'm never emailing council again. I quit. I'm not going to participate. I'm so pissed off about this, pardon my language. And so I said, I'm basically saying it's okay to be upset. I hear you. I am upset as well, but we need you more than ever to share your voice. That's often, we don't want to lose people in that moment. We actually want to re-engage them and show them that actually this proves that your voice is important. We want you to share that feedback because democracy dies in the darkness. And the fewer people, and as people become disengaged for any variety of reasons, and that is an issue with politics right now in general, that even if it doesn't go your way, your participation is critical, whether it's on this issue or another issue. And often, just from a practical perspective, there are often multiple steps in many municipal decisions. So just because this one didn't go our way, there are other steps in this where there might be a way to turn that ship around. So I'm just saying, do not give up. We need your voice. Your voice is really, really valuable. And sometimes it even galvanizes them to get more involved as well. Often a lot of us, I think, especially women who run for office, ran because of a specific issue that galvanized them into running. That's how I got into it. So I think encouraging folks to not give up and to know their voice is valuable, whether that vote goes their way or not, is really, really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Alysson. And Sue, would you like to give us some
I will.
points on that?
I think what I find is we need to recognize that the average person does not understand how municipal government works. They need to be educated. So when they come at you with, well, why did that happen? Or why did you do it that way? Educating them as to the processes, what the policies are in place that we have to follow, what are the legislative requirements that we have to follow. And I think educating people helps them understand why things went a certain way, and then give them the skills to know what to do different the next time if they're bringing something else forward. And I think that helps take some of that anger away from them. It's just plain education. Knowledge is power for them.
Thank you very much. And Olive?
Oh, I really like the responses from both Alysson and Sue on this one. And we were briefed about these questions a week ago. And so one of the briefing points I thought was very good. If there's any new information, get back to them quickly. And I think be really responsive. And one of the things that we didn't mention too at an earlier question was connect by being present, get out behind your desk, get into the community, be visible. And I think when they see you active in your role, you're more believable, like you're a person and you're in a relationship. And then they see you differently, and they can't quite attack you the same way because you actually are a person. So do your early work, like be out there.
Thank you, ladies. These are such great ideas, such a great way to help us while we navigate through this learning process, or not just learning, while we navigate against our second term or whatever it is. It is really helpful. So thank you very much. And I'll move on to question number 6. This one is very special. A staff member is no longer responding to my request for information, and I'm not sure why. We had a cordial relationship in the past, but the continuing silence is making things difficult for me, as I need their input and items coming up for a vote. Do you have any ideas for me, what I should do, what I should not do? And Sue and Olive, is like you guys are the matriarch, and your answers are so deep and so really not challenging, but just telling us how to do it and what to do. So Sue, I would love for you to take this one away.
Okay, so on that one, I would go to the staff person and ask if there is something that I have done. And if I have unwittingly offended them in some way, apologize. And if it's something that they have misunderstood, clear up that misunderstanding. Explain maybe why I said or did what I did, and clear the air. Don't let that keep hanging over everybody's head. And don't go to others with, well, that person's not talking to me anymore. Keep it between us. Don't go beyond. Don't drag anybody else into it, but deal directly with them.
Thank you, Sue. Alysson, I'll ask you this now because you're a first-time counselor, so let me hear your input on this.
Well, I have a unique perspective because I actually was a municipal employee for about 10 years ago, and now I'm a counselor. So I've actually been on both sides of that table, which I think is actually been quite helpful. I didn't know 10 years ago where I'd be in 10 years, but as it turns out, that was quite helpful, mainly because often municipal staff are usually overworked. They've got a lot of things on their plate, and they often don't even realize that they're not getting back to you necessarily. It's not always personal at all. It has nothing to do with the counselor, but we're all fairly self-absorbed people. It's just who we are as humans. We automatically assume that it was us, but often it's not. It's just a question of workload. Can be communication as well. They don't often realize that's what they're being expected to respond to you. So often it's just clarify first, and then I completely agree with Sue. If it is some kind of personal issue or a miscommunication, then that you can resolve that ideally as respectful adults, because the respect goes both ways. Our CAO has made it quite clear that we go through him. And that actually does make sense, because for council, we only have one, for the most part, only have one employee, and that the other staff actually do not work for us. So, because it can get really messy, especially with 18 councillors, if we're all just cherry picking staff and trying to go around the sort of chain of command to get stuff done. And it's easier for us too. It keeps things centralized. So from our perspective, I do tend to send everything I need to the CAO, and then he farms it out to the right person, just from a purely process piece. But often, I mean, Sue's point is well taken, that sometimes it can be a miscommunication or a personality issue.
All right. Thank you, Alysson. Thank you very much. So Olive, I would love to get your input on that.
Yes, try remembering that this is try not to have it be personal. Like try elevating it to the issue, whatever you need information on this and that, and why are you not getting it. So, you know, when I said earlier that I would go around when I started a new position, I would talk to everyone, I would write it down, I would make notes. What happened with that is I also got allegiances, people that then took care of me and protected me. And those people who protected me would give me information about non-responsiveness in other people. So it's the culture, right? You figure out the culture of the organization. And so once I understood the things that people didn't obviously talk about, then I could function differently and better within that culture. So again, one grad student told me years ago, well begun is half done. And I've never forgotten it. And so I would say, yeah, and Alysson, you talked about investing time. Yeah, put a lot of time when you start a job, work like crazy to understand the culture. And then you have direction and protection. These women protected me because everybody has their little foibles. You know, there are all these little wires around, and they really would help. These two women helped me be successful. Oh, they were incredible. So, but it's all relationships, right? Everything is relationships. So I can't add anything more to what Alysson and Sue were saying, just a little personal thing.
Thank you very much. And sometimes some of these mistakes are really genuine mistakes. You do something that you weren't even aware of, or you didn't know that you were stepping on somebody's toe. So that is truly great. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much. So I have another question for you. And I know that there's some in the chat also. How have you found the process of building connection differs in the online world, virtual meeting, email, and social media? I know this one is quite an easy one. So Olive, why don't I just start out with you?
Yes, one week I did a presentation in Ottawa via Zoom, and the same presentation in Edmonton that week. What a difference. My gosh, the ones in Edmonton, I was leaving my same presentation. They were leaving, I was leaving, and they were touching me and hugging me and wanted selfies with me. Ottawa went, hello, goodbye. Zoom is wonderful. Like here I'm talking to you in Ontario, and I'm, you know, thousands of kilometers away. It really works. I was teaching these courses on loneliness, and my class is filled in 6 hours and they all felt they had a relationship with me because I made these little videos and talking about loneliness. They saw who I was. Could I write their references for them? And they felt they had a connection with me. It's great, but it's not the best. But it does have its advantages. One thing I'd like to really stress, though, is that we need to be briefed in digital literacy, all of us. And my courses, I kind of like teaching and learning a lot. So I hired someone to do my PowerPoints. I mean, I have nice PowerPoints, but nothing like a professional can do. And the students would say, because the students take courses from other professors, and they'd say, "Oh, your PowerPoints are outstanding." And they said, then maybe she cares. She cares for the content. She cares for the presentation, right? But I'm not a tech person. I'd like to be, but I'm not. I have a technology tutor. He's in grade 11. I see him once a week for 2 hours because I need to keep up. But so I need to work on my digital literacy all the time. But this fake news stuff, my goodness. Now, this is all conspiracy theory, right? So so I'm telling my grandchildren, okay, you just watch this. What did you learn from that? And what kind of questions do you have? I'm briefing them on critical thinking because we've lost it in our society. But the media has made all this stuff lies. And we really have to stop and think, is this real? Is this not real? What is happening? So that would be my caution.
Thank you very much. Alysson, you want to share your insight on that? And then I'll get to Sue.
Sure. Well, I am a social media consultant. I have been for many years before this. I'm sort of weeding myself out of that because overall I think social media is a cesspool. But I do think social media has huge benefit, but also a huge cost. And unfortunately, it has not gotten better. It's gotten worse, especially with women elected officials online. It's been extremely toxic and it's not improving, unfortunately. And it's driven a lot of women off social media. And I've definitely adapted my own approach because you really need to set boundaries. I think we talked about boundaries a little earlier in our conversation because you can be online all the time. I have 4 active social media channels because one of my key pillars of my platform when I was running was communication. Because there's a lot of complaints about the lack of communication from our local government. So I wanted to sort of counteract that, but it's a big time commitment. So make sure that you be reasonable and realistic about what you may want to dedicate to that, if you want to do it at all. Because there are a lot of pros and cons to that. I would also suggest that as soon as you can, take them off social media into your email or into a conversation, because it's very difficult to have productive conversations on a Facebook page or battling it out. And no good can come from that, none. So that get a comment, ask them to contact you or phone you, and then take it offline essentially, because that's where, again, we're human to human. And it's a little more easy to get things done. But overall, I think there is a huge benefit for access to elected officials and getting dialogue going, but there are huge costs for women especially. And so you have to be very mindful of that and consider how much time, how much bandwidth you have, and how much toxicity you're willing to put up with, because there will be some of it. Overall, now that I've managed and be liberal with the block. You know, you don't actually owe anyone anything as an elected official. You do. And people say, "Oh, well, I pay your salary," and you're like, "No, well, 0.001 cent of it maybe," but that's not the point. The point is you do not have to put up with abuse from anyone at any time, no matter who you are, elected official or not. So you can use that block button whenever you need to, and don't even have to explain yourself. And now that I've blocked a bunch of the really idiotic and rude people, I actually don't have any more issues. So I think it was just a small group that were very loud and obnoxious, and now my social media is actually quite reasonable. So, and if anyone wants to talk about that offline with me another time, please do. But I think there are pros and cons for sure.
Thank you, Alysson. As you said, if you have one or if you don't have any at all, I have to confess to that. I have none at all. I have no social media. Thank you. Sue?
So I, again, maybe have the short answer. Check your junk mail folder. Often I think we need to remember that, because for whatever reason, things go there. And if it's a resident with a question and you haven't answered them for a couple of weeks, they can get a little testy. So that needs to be a daily reminder for me.
Yeah, that is. I always check my junk. I think I check it before I check the regular one. So thank you again, ladies. I I have another question. How do you keep people up to date in a world where headlines and media change constantly and messages get lost along the way? So Alysson, I'll let you start with that.
That is a tough one. That's a tough one right now. I think you basically have to take into consideration your own bandwidth. Again, I think it would be similar to my previous answer. Whatever format you're comfortable with, whether it's a newsletter, I'm actually thinking about switching over more of my social media to a newsletter directly to constituents because you control that. If Instagram or Facebook went under tomorrow, you'd lose all those people. So there's ways around that. Practically, you can have coffee chats in your community. You can, your phone number and your email are on on the municipal website usually. So I would just encourage people to reach out to you directly to get the information that they need. Subscribe to municipal newsletters. Basically, Olive's point earlier about critical thinking, like go right to the source. Don't take things second or third hand. As we all know, the telephone game, especially in smaller communities, can get right out of hand. And just relying on one-to-one conversations, I think is critical because you're right, it is tough to trust a lot of news sources right now. So, but locally, we are, I think, at an advantage because we have more access to our local officials. One of our FCM mottos is municipalities are the government of proximity. So we are the ones closest to the people. And that can have blessings and curses, but in terms of communication and accessing direct information and getting answers you need right away from the people making them, I think that is one of the best parts of local government. One of the best parts of being a councillor, deputy mayor, or mayor is you have that direct interaction and relationship with people who can ask you to clarify any issue or answer any question.
Thank you.
And I think on this one, being in a small municipality, 11,000 people, small communities, everybody tends to know each other. Misinformation can travel on the gossip mill chain so quickly. And it's listening to that and not jumping right on it. Sometimes it's that squeaky wheel thinks they're going to get looked after first if they yell loud enough to everybody. And it's getting to the bottom of the issues and finding out what the real issues are and not allowing ourselves to be sidetracked by the rumor mill and sometimes the threats of, well, everybody that I've talked to says this. And I've gotten that from some other counselors. Well, I've talked to everybody and they think this. Not always. Sometimes that's a little bit of the power struggle that can go on. People want to get their own way. And so it's learning how to adapt to that, I think.
Thank you. And Olive?
I'll just tell you a little story. I was at when I was in the provost's office, I was went to Berkeley to study Berkeley to see how they did their administration. And because we were close to Sun Systems, and Sun Systems were the system we use for infrastructure for the university, and we're looking, our university, we have about an infrastructure of about, everybody, about 50 to 60,000 people. So what a great opportunity. So I asked the CEO was in, and he said, ask me any question. And I said, I get hundreds of emails of information that is out there. It's there on the web. And I said, what can I do about all these emails I get? Because I'm responding and I'm quoting the policy and I'm directing traffic, And of course, the EA is doing this as well. And I said, what's the answer? And he said, don't. You don't answer any emails. You don't send any emails. He said the issue is that people have to learn to search themselves for the information that they need. Stop babysitting them. And I never, of course, have forgotten his answer, but for utilities or trying to follow up on a warranty, there's no one there helping you. There's no phone call anymore. You search and you can spend half the day dealing with utilities. So he had the answer, but I'm still not convinced that that's the answer. Like teach people how to search for the answers. So I'm a little off topic there. Just want to say it's a problem, a huge problem. Too much data.
Thank you. You're at a conference, a Roma conference, FCM, whatever it is, and a well-known influential person is sitting by themselves and no one is speaking with them. What opening question would you suggest I use to break the ice? Just an opening question like, how do I start? Where do I begin? And I am going to start off with you, Olive.
Just thinking of all these situations I have been in. I am fortunate. My personality is such that I'm an extrovert. I like talking to people. And so I'll make a judgment about safety in terms of, because I don't want to intrude their boundaries or be too nosy, I guess, about what they're doing. But I'm always curious because they have reputations. And so I'll be usually, knowing where I was raised, to be very polite, and a very cautious introduction would be, how are you enjoying this conference, or how are things going for you? Then I watched one of my colleagues, and he came up to us. It was a wine and cheese thing, and she said to him, very first thing she said to him, "What's wrong with your eyes? They're far too red." And he said, "Well, I'm glad you mentioned that." And he said, "I've got all these allergies going on, and da 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 da." And I watched the interaction, and I thought she went really personal. It worked out really well for her. And I thought, am I wasting my time with social niceties? Like, maybe I should just be honest and say, I noticed this about you. Something, rather than just always the nice girl conversation. Why don't I just get out there a little bit? And maybe make a comment that's a little edgy. So that's all I want to say about that.
Well, thank you very much. Alysson, would you like to chime in on this one?
Well, that's a great question. I think for the most part, I try, if it's just like a one-on-one in a conference situation, which can be a little more informal, I try and sort of keep it lighthearted and a little more informal, because I would never comment on someone's appearance. That to me is terrifying. But if they had like a shirt like this from Madam Premier that is obviously inviting a conversation, I would totally comment on that. But sometimes if you know who they are, and you can introduce yourself first and just say, great to see you. And if you have a little tidbit of something that just happened, great. I often, because this is such a silly little thing, but Chatham-Kent invented pineapple on pizza. Like, just a random factoid, if you see this on Jeopardy, now you can know where it came from. But often just an icebreaker like that in an informal situation can really go a long way. And you might have something equally, random about your community or something fun like that. But I usually try in those situations where it is a little more informal and social to just try something fun and break the ice. And of course, if they look at you with a blank stare, that, you took your shot, so be it. Oh, well. There's the oh well again, right? You tried to be friendly and fun, and usually that's a great type of fun conversation starter. It just shows a little bit more personality and puts people at ease. That would be one of my suggestions.
Thank you. Oh, well. Sue, take it away.
So I think I come at things from a little different perspective, because I normally tend to be a little bit of an introvert. And not that I don't enjoy getting out and talking to people, but I'm also quite happy in my own little world. But if I make eye contact, if somebody kind of returns eye contact, I will step out and speak to them. But if somebody's obviously sitting off by themselves and kind of not making eye contact, I'll respect that kind of boundary they seem to be putting up, and I will not approach them. So maybe a little different take on it, but that's just me.
What should be done to deal with the lack of civility in politics that has led to many elected officials to quit, especially women?
From my perspective as mayor, if that lack of civility is happening within council chambers, that is my role as chair, as the mayor, to ensure that that doesn't carry on within council chambers. It's my role to keep that conversation moving, and if someone is speaking with a lack of disrespect for someone else, that's up to me to stop it. So I think if a new councillor especially is facing that type of thing, they need to talk to their mayor or the chair of that particular committee and see about getting that person to help them with making sure that lack of civility doesn't continue to occur, because that type of toxicity in a council chamber stops a conversation. And I have encouraged in my council chamber that everybody has the right to their opinion, and I want to hear from every one of them all the time. And past councils, the chair or the mayor always spoke first and basically told everybody, here's how I think, this is how you need to think. And I've changed that dynamic. I don't speak until the very end, and only if I have something to say that the rest of them don't. So it took me a good 6-7 months to get them all talking, but we now have some really good discussions around our council chambers.
I would probably add a slightly different piece to that. Sue, all of Sue's points are critical because the chair of the meeting really does set the tone, and I can't stress enough, as someone who's not the chair, as someone who's sitting around the table, how important that is, and how much it is missed when it's not done respectfully and effectively. What I would add is that there are groups like electHER, but there are other groups as well that are focused on helping women feel safer online and safer as elected officials. And I would encourage folks to link up with those groups. There is a group called Women of Ontario Say No, and that is a nonpartisan group. It's not just for women. It started out as that, but it's much broader. It crosses all political lines, and we are advocating. I'm part of it. It's a very grassroots group, but to advocate for safety. It started out of heinous abuse of female elected officials, but it really does apply to municipal elected officials behaving badly. And so there are tools that we can advocate with our MPPs in Ontario, for example, to move that legislation forward. There's no reason why we shouldn't have that in place, because right now, unfortunately, despite best efforts, there will be examples of this egregious behavior, and we need women especially to know that we're working on tools that will protect them if there are those examples of egregious behavior, because right now there really aren't any. Not to be, I think we need to be honest about the situation that we find ourselves in. So there are things like legislation that all three parties, except for the government, currently supporting that. And the more voices that we lend to those efforts, I think the more opportunity we have to make this, it benefits women elected officials, it'll benefit queer and trans politicians, it'll benefit anyone from communities that aren't well represented on council, who often are targets of this type of harassment. And we are reaching a critical point that we need to have this actually legislated to make sure that we have tools to hold people accountable.
Okay, I just would add that there's nothing like a nice code of conduct that is active. The other thing, structurally, for our executive, we had the secretariat who attended all the meetings and kept that kind of behavior at bay. The chair didn't have to do it. He or she did it. And how nice is that when you have someone else being that kind of monitor to control the interactions? And there's something that you know from just your own work, like when you are representing, you're a representative, you represent a whole, not just your one little municipality or one interest group. You speak for all. You're an elected official for all. And this guy would keep on reminding us of that. Our role was to speak for all. And it's those kinds of things that you need to be realize again exactly what your role is and how to act professionally in that role. Now, the other thing that is coming up, which really distresses me, is that how people are harassing and bullying online women, and to the point they are quitting. And I am very angry. I'm a very angry woman when I hear it or when I see it, and I feel almost impotent in terms of how to manage that. Because of course I think of my daughter and my granddaughters, and you know, that's where it's coming for me. And I'm glad, Alysson, you've mentioned these organizations, guys, because we have to get organized because we cannot be passive about this. This is real and it's hurtful. So to me, emotion, anger motivates. Like it's a motivation.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Ladies, this was like a fireside chat. This was great. I just want to say a big thank you to all who asked and answered questions tonight. But before we end, I'd like to give each of our panelists the opportunity to make a few closing remarks. I will start with Olive, and I can tell you that we only have 2 minutes each. Okay, so I will start off with you, Olive.
I think it's less than 2 minutes.
Exactly.
First of all, I'm very, very honored. Well begun is half done is living in all the papers I have in front of me. I am so impressed with the level of organization, and it's just amazing to me, and I really, really appreciate it.
I'll just add my thanks as well. I think it's been a wonderful evening. The only maybe last piece that I would leave would be I try to remember to keep my own ego out of it and stay impartial at all times. So thank you for the evening. It's been enjoyable.
Oh, you're very welcome. And Alysson, take it away.
All I would add is I'm so thrilled with the electHER platform, and thank you for all you're doing to encourage more women to run. I'm always here to help if folks want to reach out. That's one, if I can leave you with one message wrapping up tonight, is ask for help. Folks, especially women, are amazing supporters of each other. I have had so many wonderful mentors and reach out to other councillors in my community and across Ontario and Canada for that matter. We want to help other women get elected. We really, really do. So don't be embarrassed to cold call. I mean, if we're on this call, we're not cold calling each other now. We are friends. So would love to hear from anyone. If any kind of questions, let us know, because asking for help is not a weakness. It is a strength and will help us all be successful to hit that goal of 50% by 2030. So thank you for the opportunity to chat tonight. I learned so much.
This was really great. I've learned a lot, and I just want to thank you again, not just our panelists, but for all the women, literally all of Ontario, from different region, different municipalities, whether it's a big one or a small one. This was a really great learning event. And as I said before, it's building positive connection. What else could we ask for? So thank you again, ladies, and have a wonderful night. Hoping to see you soon.
Take care.
Joan, do you want to
Good
stay
night,
on,
everyone.
please?